Lyra stepped into the small cafe on the human space station, the door hissing shut behind her. She was only there to get a warm drink before heading back to her quarters, but the moment she entered, she froze. A deep, vibrating sound rolled through the air, heavy like distant thunder. It came from a black box mounted in the corner, and every beat made her chest tremble. Her frills twitched. She had heard stories all her life, warnings from elders, teachers, and even government officials. Human rock music was said to be chaotic and harmful. They claimed it caused confusion, aggression, even madness in alien minds. Lyra had always believed it, and her first instinct was to turn around and leave. But something in the sound made her hesitate. It didn't feel like pain. It felt strange. Her pulse quickened and her breath caught in her throat. She took a cautious step inside, her eyes scanning the cafe. A few humans sat at tables, tapping their fingers or nodding their heads to the rhythm. Some aliens were here too, but most of them had sour, uncomfortable looks on their faces. One even muttered under his breath as he left. Lyra swallowed hard and made her way to an empty corner, hoping the sound would fade into the background. It didn't. The music shifted, the guitar grinding in a way that sent a shiver down her spine. Her fingertips tingled and her legs felt light. She gripped the edge of her table to steady herself. It was as if the music was reaching into her and pulling something out she didn't know she had. She tried to focus on the drink menu, but the letters blurred as the beat pounded in her ears. Across the room, a human man was watching her. He had messy brown hair, grease stains on his sleeves, and eyes that seemed to read her every movement. He got up slowly, walking toward her with a relaxed, almost lazy stride. When he reached her table, he leaned slightly forward. "You okay?" he asked, his voice casual but curious. Lyra looked up, startled. She opened her mouth to answer but hesitated. Should she admit the truth? That this sound, the one her people feared, was making her heart race instead of ache? She tried to form a calm answer. "I think the sound is too strong." The man's lips twitched into a grin. "This," he pointed toward the black speaker, "this is nothing. That's soft rock. You haven't heard the real thing yet." She blinked at him, unsure if he was joking. "Soft? It feels like it's inside me." "That's the point," he said, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her. "Rock's supposed to get in your head, make you feel something you didn't expect." Lyra shifted uncomfortably. "My kind says it's dangerous?" "Dangerous?" He chuckled. "Only if you're scared of feeling alive." Her frills twitched again, reacting to the way he said alive. There was no pressure in his tone, no mockery, just certainty. She wanted to look away, but her curiosity betrayed her. "Is there more of it?" He leaned back, the grin growing wider. "Oh, there's a lot more, but I don't think you're ready for it." Something in her chest tightened. She didn't like being told she wasn't ready. "I could be," she said before she could stop herself. He studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to see past her words. "Name's Cole. I'm an engineer here. If you want to know what rock really is, meet me after your shift. My workshop's on the lower deck." Her heart gave a strange jolt. She didn't know this human, didn't even know if it was safe, but the thought of hearing more pulled at her. She nodded before her mind could argue. Cole stood, pushing his chair back. "Careful, though. First time's always a shock." As he walked away, Lyra stared at the tabletop, the music still rumbling through her bones. She told herself she was only curious, that it was just sound. But when she finally left the cafe, her steps felt lighter, almost in time with the fading rhythm. Back in the quiet of the corridor, she realized her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from something else entirely. The stories had been wrong. Human rock hadn't hurt her. It had woken her. And now she couldn't stop thinking about what the next song might do. Cole was already at the workshop when Lyra arrived. The lower deck was quieter than the rest of the station, the hum of the engines constant in the background. She stopped outside the half-open door, peering in. The space was messy, metal parts scattered across tables, glowing tools hanging from the wall, and a faint smell of oil and burnt circuits in the air. Cole looked up from a device he was fixing, a faint smile touching his lips when he saw her. "Didn't think you'd actually come," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Lyra stepped inside cautiously. "I said I would." He motioned for her to come closer. "So you survived soft rock? Want to see what the real thing sounds like?" Her frills gave a small twitch at his tone, half challenge, half promise. She folded her arms. I'm not sure I should. My people believe. Your people believe it's dangerous, he finished for her. Yeah, you told me. But maybe they're wrong. You felt something in the cafe, didn't you? Lyra hesitated. She didn't want to admit it, but the truth slipped out. It made my heart faster. That's called adrenaline, Cole said, pulling open a drawer. And trust me, music's the safest way to get it. From the drawer, he took out a pair of black padded objects connected by a curved band, headphones. They looked heavier than she expected, with a strange gleam on the metal edges. He held them up. These will block every sound except the music. No distractions, no escape. Her pulse jumped. And what happens if it's too much? Then you take them off, he said simply. You're in control, always. Lyra reached out and touched the headphones. The surface was cool, smooth. They didn't feel dangerous, yet something about them made her chest tighten. She thought of the warnings again. How human sound could overwhelm the alien mind, how it could push them into emotional chaos. But standing here, with Cole's calm eyes watching her, she felt less like prey and more like someone about to take a step into unknown territory. She placed the headphones over her head, the padding pressed gently against her frills, muffling the low hum of the room. Cole walked over to a control panel and pressed a button. The first note struck her like a spark to dry wood. A drum beat pounded in her ears, steady and strong, like a giant's heartbeat. Then the guitar came, louder, sharper than anything she had heard before, each note like a flash of heat along her skin. The bass rolled through her chest, deep and thick, as if the sound was part of her own heartbeat. Her hands curled into fists without meaning to. The music wasn't just noise, it was movement, it was heat. It was something alive crawling under her skin. She felt her body swaying slightly, her frills trembling with every beat. Cole was watching closely, his expression unreadable. Too much? He asked, raising his voice just enough for her to hear. She shook her head quickly. No, more. The song built higher, faster, the drums racing, the guitar screaming with raw energy. The singer's voice came in, rough and powerful, carrying emotions she couldn't fully name, anger, joy, longing, defiance. Her chest rose and fell with quick breaths, her luminous skin patterns flickering wildly without her control. She had never felt this way before. Not during the grand ceremonies of her people, not in the quiet beauty of her homeworld's night skies. This was different. It was sharp and wild and unshaped, yet it filled her completely. Her mind flashed with images she didn't understand, running through endless corridors, leaping from great heights, shouting at the stars. It was as if the music was showing her pieces of a life she had never lived, but always wanted. The song reached its peak, then crashed into silence. She pulled the headphones off, panting lightly. For a moment, she just stood there, feeling the echoes in her body. What was that? She asked, her voice almost trembling. Cole grinned. That was just the first track. She stared at him. It felt dangerous, but I wanted more. That's how you know you're hooked, he said, leaning against the table. Most people either run away or they lean in. You're leaning in. Lyra glanced down at her hands and saw they were still shaking. What if it changes me? Cole tilted his head. What if it changes you for the better? Something in his voice made her chest warm, a small smile tugging at her lips before she could stop it. She wanted to argue, to say she'd think about it, but instead she heard herself say, "Play me another one." Cole's smile widened. He reached for the control panel again, but this time his tone was softer, almost teasing. Careful, Lyra. The more you listen, the harder it is to stop. Her frills lifted slightly in defiance. Then don't stop. As the next track began, heavier and faster than the first, she closed her eyes and let it hit her like a storm. The beat was stronger, the guitar wilder, the voice sharper. Every note seemed to push away the warnings of her people, replacing them with something new, something alive. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't the last time she'd come here. This was only the beginning. The next day, Lyra told herself she wouldn't go back to Cole's workshop. She had work to finish, reports to file, and she didn't want to look like she was chasing something she couldn't explain. But all morning, the memory of the music gnawed at her. It was there when she was eating breakfast, there when she walked through the station corridors, and there when she tried to focus on her terminal screen. Every sound she heard, a tool clinking, a door sliding, even her own footsteps, seemed dull compared to the rush from the night before. By mid-shift, she gave up pretending. She found herself walking toward the lower deck, telling herself she was just going to say hello. But when she stepped inside Cole's workshop, he looked up from under the hood of a half-repaired service bot and smirked like he had been expecting her. "You're back," he said, wiping his hands. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" "I was in the area," she lied, though her frills betrayed her by lifting slightly. Cole didn't push. Instead, he pulled a small case from under the table and set it down. "I was thinking, you've heard music in here, safe and contained, but what about feeling it?" She frowned. "Feeling it? I already feel it." "Not like this," he said, opening the case. Inside were sleek, upgraded headphones with thick cushions and a heavier frame. The metal gleamed faintly under the light. "These aren't just for listening. They have haptic feedback, tiny vibrations that sync with the beat. It's like the music moves through your skin." Lyra's pulse jumped. The thought of it made her both curious and nervous. And what if it's too much? "Then you take them off," he said again, his voice steady. "You're still the one in control." She stared at the device for a long moment before reaching out. The weight of the headphones was reassuring in her hands. She sat down, placed them over her frills, and gave a small nod. Cole tapped the console, and the world disappeared. The first note didn't just hit her ears, it rolled through her bones. The drums pounded against her chest, the guitar snarled like a living thing, and the bass shivered through her arms and legs. Every beat vibrated against her skin, making her muscles tense and release in rhythm. She gasped at the sensation, not in fear, but in surprise. Her body started moving before she thought about it. Her fingers tapped against her thigh, her foot pressed in time with the kick of the drums. She leaned forward slightly as if the sound was pulling her toward its source. The singer's voice came in, raw and fierce, carrying words she didn't understand, but emotions she could feel. Freedom, rebellion, longing. Cole watched quietly, leaning against the table. He'd seen people hear rock for the first time, but never an alien who reacted like this. Her luminescent markings brightened and shifted with the music, pulsing in sync with the beat. It was like her entire body was becoming part of the song. When the track ended, Lyra pulled off the headphones, breathing heavily. Her skin glowed with shifting colors, and her frills were spread wide. That, she struggled to find the word. That felt like flying. Cole smiled. "That's the idea. Rock isn't just something you listen to, it's something you live." She shook her head, still catching her breath. "I don't understand how humans made something like this. It's wild but perfect." "Because we're wild and imperfect," he said simply, "and rock is honest about it." She looked down at the headphones, her hands still tingling. "I want to hear another." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Already? You're going to burn yourself out." "I don't care," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. That made him chuckle. "All right, but you ask for it." He queued up a faster track. This one came at her like a storm. The tempo was furious, the guitar riff slicing like lightning, the drums thundering without pause. She felt the vibration race through her spine, down her arms, into her fingertips. Her body leaned into the rhythm, her breath syncing with the beat. It was almost too much, almost. But instead of pulling back, she pushed into it, letting the sensation wash over her. When it finally ended, she was flushed and trembling. She pulled the headphones off slowly, her eyes bright. "It's like I can't breathe, but I don't want to stop." Cole nodded, looking both amused and impressed. "You're already addicted." She didn't deny it. The music had crawled into her, taken root, and now it was part of her heartbeat. The station's ordinary sounds felt like static compared to this. She didn't know how she'd go back to silence. As she left the workshop, the vibration still echoed in her body. She could hear the faint hum of the station's engines, but in her mind, the drums were still pounding. And somewhere deep inside, she knew she'd be back tomorrow, maybe even sooner. Lyra sat in her quarters long after her shift ended, staring at the ceiling. The station was quiet, the kind of stillness that usually calmed her. But tonight, the silence felt wrong. She could almost hear the ghost of yesterday's drums, the edge of the guitar, the voice that had gripped her chest. It was like an itch deep under her skin that nothing else could reach. She stood up abruptly and left. Her feet carried her through the dimly lit corridors toward the lower deck. She didn't bother telling herself she was just passing by this time. She knew exactly where she was going. Cole was sitting on a stool when she entered his workshop, tinkering with a small amplifier. He looked up and grinned as if he had been waiting. "Figured you'd come back," he said, setting the tool down. She stepped closer. "Play me something different." He raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "I don't know. Stronger?" Cole chuckled. "You're getting bold fast." He walked over to a shelf and pulled down a set of speakers, heavier and larger than the ones she'd seen before. "No headphones this time. I want you to feel the air move." He set them up on the workbench, plugging in a small player. "Stand here," he said, pointing to a spot a few feet away. Lyra obeyed, folding her arms but feeling her pulse speed up. The moment he pressed play, the room changed. The opening riff burst out, sharp and alive, each note vibrating the air. The drums crashed in like waves hitting stone, the bass rolling through her chest so powerfully she could feel her heartbeat adjusting to it. Her frills spread instinctively, catching every change in tone, every flicker of rhythm. She had thought the headphones were intense, but this was something else entirely. The music didn't just wrap around her, it surrounded her, pressed against her skin, filled every empty space inside her. She felt the floor hum beneath her boots, the air itself shaking with the sound. Cole stood to the side, watching her reaction. She wasn't stiff or cautious anymore. Her shoulders moved with the rhythm, her hands curled and uncurled in time, her luminous markings rippling in fast pulses. Her eyes were half closed, and a faint, almost feral smile tugged at her lips. When the song shifted into a higher, faster part, she leaned into it, as if the sound was pulling her forward. Her body swayed without thought, following the current of the beat. The voice in the song rose to a raw, powerful cry that seemed to pull at something deep inside her. She didn't know the words, but she felt them, each one hitting like a strike to the heart. By the time the track ended, her breathing was fast, her skin flushed with bright color patterns she didn't even realize she was showing. She looked at Cole, and there was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "What else?" she asked. Cole smirked. "You want more?" "Yes." The word came out quickly, without hesitation. He picked another track, this one heavier, darker. The moment it started, she felt it in her bones. The guitar growled low, the drums pounded like a war march, and the bass rattled through her stomach. It wasn't playful or bright. This one was dangerous, almost predatory, and she loved it. Her breathing deepened, her movements sharper, almost like a dance she didn't know she knew. She could feel the music changing her posture, the way she stood, the way her gaze fixed on nothing and everything at once. She felt powerful, untouchable. When it ended, she laughed, a short, breathless laugh that startled her. "Why does it do that?" she asked, her voice low. Cole shrugged. "Because it's real. Humans don't hide in music. We put everything in it. Anger, joy, fear, love, all of it. And when you hear it, you feel it." She stared at the speakers, the faint hum still in the air. "I can't believe I was afraid of this." "That's how they keep you away," he said casually. "Fear's a good leash." Her frills lowered slightly as she thought about that. The warnings of her people suddenly felt smaller, weaker. How many others had believed the same lies and never felt this? Cole started putting the speakers away. "We should stop here before you overload." Lyra shook her head. "No, one more." He looked at her for a long moment, then slowly smiled. "All right, but this one's special." The next track began soft, almost gentle, then exploded into a wall of sound so rich it stole her breath. It wasn't just power, it was beauty wrapped in chaos. The melody soared above the drums, weaving through the roar of the guitar. She felt her chest ache, her throat tighten. It was too much and not enough all at once. When it ended, she stood still, the echoes fading from her skin. Cole's voice broke the silence. "So?" She turned to him, her eyes bright and certain. "I think I'm starting to understand why you love it." Cole grinned. "Careful, pretty soon you'll love it more than I do." She smiled faintly, but inside she knew it was already too late. The music was part of her now. Over the next few days, Lyra found herself making excuses to pass by Cole's workshop. Sometimes she claimed she needed to check a maintenance panel nearby. Other times, she said she was delivering a small part from storage. But each time she stayed longer than necessary, letting Cole play her another track, another style, another pulse of human rock. She began to recognize patterns, the way a slow build could make her chest ache before the sudden burst of sound lifted her, the way a sharp guitar riff could feel like a spark running through her spine, the way a strong drum beat could set her whole body moving before she even noticed. She liked how unpredictable it was. No two songs felt the same. But she also started noticing the stairs. In the corridors, other aliens looked at her longer than usual. Some turned away quickly, others whispered to each other. At first, she ignored it. But then, on her way back from the workshop one evening, a tall male from her species stepped into her path. His expression was tight, his frills pressed flat in disapproval. "You've been spending a lot of time with that human," he said. Lyra kept her voice calm. "He's a mechanic. He helps me with equipment." "Equipment?" The male's eyes narrowed. "We've heard the sounds. That human filth you're letting into your mind? Do you want to be known as one of them?" Her frills lifted in sharp warning. "I decide what I listen to." He leaned closer. "Keep going, and you'll be marked. No clan will accept you. You'll be alone." Lyra stepped around him without another word, but his warning followed her down the corridor like a shadow. For the first time, she wondered if this thing she had found, the thrill, the freedom, could cost her more than she expected. The next day, she went to the workshop anyway. Cole was sitting on the floor with parts scattered around him, repairing a small hover unit. He looked up and immediately noticed her tense posture. "What happened?" he asked. "Nothing," she said quickly, though her frills twitched. He didn't believe her, but he didn't press. Instead, he stood and went to the console. "I was saving this one for later, but maybe you need it now." Before she could ask, the speakers came alive. The song started slow, just a single guitar playing a gentle melody. Then the drums came in, soft at first, then stronger, more certain. The bass joined, grounding the sound like the steady beat of a heart. Lyra felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. The singer's voice was deep, rich, and full of quiet strength. It wasn't wild like the others. It didn't push her to move. Instead, it wrapped around her like a shield. Every word, though she didn't understand it, felt like a promise, one that said she didn't have to bow to anyone's rules, that her choices were her own. By the time the song ended, she felt calmer, but also more certain. Cole gave her a small smile. "That one's called an anthem. It's the kind of song you keep for when you need to remember who you are." She returned the smile faintly. "It feels like it's telling me I can stand my ground." "That's exactly what it's telling you," he said. They spent the rest of the day exploring different tracks. Some were bright and fast, making her laugh. Others were deep and heavy, leaving her with goosebumps. She didn't notice the time passing until the station lights shifted to evening mode. As she left, she felt lighter. But the moment she stepped into the corridor, she saw two of her people watching from the far end. They didn't speak, but their expressions said enough. That night, she sat in her quarters thinking about the choice in front of her. She could stop now, return to the silence her clan approved of, avoid the whispers and the threats, or she could keep going, keep feeling the way she felt when the music hit her, the rush, the freedom, the spark that nothing else gave her. She already knew her answer. The next morning, she walked into the workshop with a look that made Cole raise an eyebrow. "You're sure about something?" he said. "I am," she replied. "I want to hear the loudest one you've got." He grinned slowly, turning to the console. "You asked for it." When the first blast of sound hit her, she closed her eyes and let it fill her completely. The warnings, the stares, the threats, they all faded under the roar of human rock. Cole didn't tell her where they were going until the transport doors closed. Lyra sat across from him, the small shuttle humming as it left the station. Through the window, stars slid past in slow streaks. Her frills twitched in curiosity. "You could at least tell me why we left the station," she said. He leaned back with a grin. "Because listening through speakers in my workshop isn't enough anymore. You're ready for the real thing." She tilted her head. "The real thing?" "A live concert," he said simply. "Biggest rock festival in this sector. Thousands of humans, massive sound. You'll feel it in your bones." Her stomach tightened. She pictured the warnings from her people, the threats from others in the corridors. She imagined being surrounded by humans, every one of them lost in that wild noise. Part of her wanted to tell him to turn the shuttle around. But another part, a louder part, was already racing ahead, imagining what it might feel like. The shuttle landed on a colony world lit up against the night sky. From a distance, she could already see beams of light flashing into the sky, hear the faint hum of something massive moving through the air. As they got closer, the sound became clearer, deep, rolling bass like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Cole led her toward the arena. The crowd was huge, humans laughing, shouting, some wearing strange symbols and painted designs on their faces. She saw glowing wristbands, spiked jackets, and boots that thudded against the ground in rhythm to the music pouring from inside. The moment they stepped into the arena, the air hit her. It was thick, alive, trembling with sound. Drums pounded so hard she could feel them in her ribs. The guitars tore through the air like lightning, and the voices, thousands of them, rose together in a roar that made her skin flare with color. She froze. It was too much, too big, too loud. She had never felt so small in her life. Cole noticed and stepped closer, speaking directly into her ear. "Don't fight it. Let it take you." She took a slow breath and stepped forward. The band on stage was a blur of movement, fingers racing over strings, drumsticks striking with impossible speed, the singer's voice cutting through the storm like fire. Every note hit her body like a wave. At first, she just stood there, holding her ground against it. But slowly, the fear melted. Her heart matched the beat, her muscles loosened, and she found herself swaying, then moving in time. The humans around her were shouting the lyrics, jumping in rhythm, some with their arms in the air. She copied them without thinking, lifting her arms, feeling the vibration travel all the way to her fingertips. The lights flashed over the crowd, catching her glowing skin. When the beam swept across her, the humans nearest to her shouted louder, pointing at her shimmering patterns. Cole laughed beside her. "You're stealing the show." She barely heard him. The music was inside her now, flowing through her like blood. She didn't know the song, didn't know the words, but she knew the meaning. It was joy, defiance, and freedom all at once. When the song ended, the crowd erupted into cheers, the sound almost as loud as the music itself. Lyra's chest was heaving, her skin alive with shifting colors. She turned to Cole, breathless. "Again." He grinned, nodding toward the stage. "Oh, we've got hours left." The next song began even faster, the drums a relentless heartbeat, the guitars screaming high above them. She jumped with the crowd, the ground shaking beneath her feet. Every time the bass hit, her body lit up brighter, the colors pulsing in perfect sync with the beat. At some point, she forgot the warnings, the threats, the disapproving stares. She forgot the station, her clan, everything except the here and now. She was just another body in the crowd, just another voice shouting into the music, just another heartbeat in the sea of sound. When the final song ended and the band took their bows, Lyra was drenched in sweat, her legs aching, her throat raw from shouting. But she felt more alive than she ever had before. Outside, the night air was cool, the distant hum of the arena still in her ears. She leaned against a railing, catching her breath. Cole stood beside her, looking amused and proud at once. "Well?" he asked. She smiled faintly, her voice quiet but certain. "I think I belong there, in that sound." Cole nodded. "Told you the real thing would change you." She looked out at the stars, the echoes still alive in her chest. It hadn't just changed her, it had claimed her. The transport ride back to the station was quiet, but not in the way it used to be. For Lyra, the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with echoes of the concert. She could still feel the bass in her chest, still see the blinding lights flashing over the crowd, still hear thousands of voices singing as one. Every time she closed her eyes, the memory came rushing back, making her frills tremble with the aftershock. Cole sat across from her, watching her with a small, knowing smile. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" She opened her eyes slowly. "It's still there, all of it. I can feel it." He nodded. "That's how you know it got into your blood. It doesn't fade fast." When they stepped off the transport, the station corridors felt smaller, the lights dimmer. It was as if everything around her had been turned down to half volume. She found herself missing the chaos already. But she also noticed the eyes. Other aliens glanced at her, some looking away quickly, others letting their disapproval show openly. Word of her time with Cole and now her trip off station must have spread. Halfway to her quarters, 3 of her people blocked her path. The tallest, a female with sharp, narrowed eyes, stepped forward. "You've gone too far," she said. A public concert? With humans? Do you want the whole sector to see you disgracing your bloodline? Lyra's frills lowered, her voice firm. I'm not disgracing anything, Whiskey. I'm living my life. The female's expression hardened. Your choices reflect on all of us. Stop before you lose your place among your own. For a moment, Lyra's chest tightened. The weight of her clan's approval had been with her all her life. But the thought of giving up the music, the sound that had made her feel more alive than anything, was unbearable. She stepped forward, her eyes steady. If being myself means losing my place, then I'll find somewhere else to stand. The group exchanged glances, but none of them followed her as she walked away. When she reached Cole's workshop, he was already there, hunched over an open amplifier. She didn't bother with a greeting. Play me something. He looked up, scanning her expression, and must have seen the mix of anger and resolve in her eyes. Without a word, he turned to the console and cued a track. The opening was slow, almost gentle, like the first breath after a storm. Then the drums came in, steady, strong, unshakable. The guitar rose above them, fierce but full of hope. Lyra closed her eyes, letting it wash over her. She thought about the confrontation in the corridor, about the way the crowd at the concert had moved as one, about how every beat seemed to say the same thing, stand your ground. When the song ended, she opened her eyes to find Cole watching her closely. Rough day? He asked. She gave a small, tired smile. Not rough, just clear. He tilted his head. Clear how? I'm not going back, she said simply. Not to silence, not to fear. Cole's smile widened. Then you're one of us now. She laughed softly. One of you? One of anyone who lives for the sound, he replied. It doesn't matter if you're human or alien. Once you've felt it, you belong to it. In the days that followed, she stopped hiding her visits to the workshop. She walked the corridors without flinching under the stairs. Some aliens whispered. Others avoided her entirely, Whiskey. But a few, just a few, looked at her with curiosity instead of judgment. One even asked her quietly what it felt like. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she brought them to the workshop, sat them down, and let Cole play something that could speak for her. Late one evening, Cole found her sitting on the floor of the workshop, leaning back against the wall, eyes closed as a slow rock ballad played. Her glowing skin pulsed gently with the rhythm. He crouched beside her. You're not just listening anymore, he said. You're living in it. She opened her eyes and smiled faintly. Maybe I am. He offered her a small player, portable, with a set of headphones, for when you can't be here. She took it carefully, as if it were more than just a device. Thank you. When she walked back to her quarters that night, she didn't notice the whispers, didn't care about the disapproving glances. She had her own world now, one filled with rhythm, power, and freedom. And as she lay down to sleep, she slipped the headphones on, letting the first notes play. Her heart began to race, just as it had in the cafe that very first day. Only now she understood why.